Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Saturday, the 4th of May, and here's a couple of comments since my last video. France, according to official figures released by the French Office for the Protection of Refugees, 123,625 people had applied for asylum in 2018, a 22.7% increase from 2017, which had been a record-breaking year. 46,700 have been granted refugee status. African asylum seekers make up the largest single nationality in 2018, up from 55% from the previous year. The biggest single increase was from Georgia, with 7,000 applicants, which is an increase of 256% on 2017. It has also been reported that in the district of Saint-Denis, located 9 kilometres from the centre of Paris, there could be as many as 400,000 illegal immigrants, with many living in tents because of the strain the sheer numbers have put on social services. The increased numbers started last year with the destruction of the Calais jungle, with some estimating up to 500 people arriving every single day. A quick search on YouTube will reveal the mess left. Can you imagine the centre aisle of O'Connell Street with thousands of tents with people just hanging around with rubbish thrown about and clothes and bedding piled up in mounds? You can get an idea of what parts of Paris have become. This has also resulted in an epidemic of rats from discarded food and human waste. Police in Lyon have discovered over the weekend a military-grade rocket launcher in the boot of a car driven by 2 known criminals with extremist tendencies that may have been involved in a larger network of smuggling of auto parts and illegal weapons. This is the third military-grade weapon found in the last 2 months. And still in France, 4 radical Islamic extremists were arrested last Friday and remain in custody and are said to have been plotting to murder French police officers. One of those arrested was under 18, was previously sentenced for trying to join ISIS in Syria. Investigators said that they had drawn up plans for attacking to coincide with the beginning of Ramadan, which begins tomorrow, Sunday the 5th of May. This plot joins 4 others that police have so far stopped this year, including in March of this year the arrest of 2 20-year-old men who were plotting to attack a kindergarten and take some of the children and staff hostage, and then attack police when they arrive. This now is the same number of all of the attacks that were foiled last year, and according to an ISIS detainee in Turkey, one of the more ambitious plots involved 2 senior French ISIS members who were brothers who plotted to commit mass shootings, but also involved in a planned attack on a nuclear power plant, both of which were eventually killed in Syria. Germany, a 21-year-old German-Algerian woman who was captured in the Middle East after joining ISIS, has been charged in a German court for being a member of the group's morality police and taking children as sex slaves. Sarah, the girl only known as Sarah O, who joined ISIS at the age of 15, faces multiple charges after she ran away from home in 2003 to marry an ISIS fighter. According to prosecutors, she moved into a house after ISIS had killed the occupants and enslaved 3 Yazidi children to complete domestic jobs for the family. The parents of her husband are also wanted by the police and are now wanted by the police for questioning, for aiding their son and helping him join ISIS. Last year, a German woman, only known as Jennifer, was arrested and accused of being part of the morality police while living in ISIS-controlled territory since 2013 and patrolled Mosul and Fallujah in Iraq wearing a suicide vest. On trial in April of this year, the 27-year-old and her husband are also accused of buying a 5-year-old Yazidi girl and her mother after being captured by ISIS and letting the 5-year-old girl die of thirst after punishing the girl by chaining her outside for wetting her mattress. The mother now lives in Germany as a refugee. It makes you wonder what kind of horrors has ISIS concubine Lisa Smith witnessed or took part in when part of the religious police and while teaching children how to use weapons to kill infidels. Why should people who renounced their citizenship be welcomed back and assume that they can return to a normal life? If Lisa Smith comes back to Ireland, she will need 24-hour surveillance, as she will be held in high esteem amongst some members of the Islamic community. There may be moderate Muslims, but there is no moderate Islam. I'm reminded of a quote from President Erdogan of Turkey, quote, "There is no such thing as moderate Islam. Islam is Islam. Our domes are our helmets, our minarets, our spears, our mosques, our barracks, and our followers are our soldiers." And that's from the horse's mouth. Sweden. More from that canary in the coal mine. Swedish authorities have declined to deport a migrant who sexually assaulted 11 women in less than 2 weeks. Saeed Rendi carried out the attacks between January the 28th and February the 11th in the city of Uppsala, a university town with a population of 168,000, 40 miles north of Stockholm, and said to have jumped the women from behind and fled the area while wearing a surgical mask. He was eventually arrested because the car he used is owned by the municipal government, in which he used to look after a young autistic boy who was with him at the time of his arrest. The car's GPS coordinates were used to link him to all 11 attacks. 2 of the incidents were serious enough to be classed as rape and as attempted rape, and Rendi was convicted by the court but only sentenced to a suspended sentence, 60 hours community service, and a fine to be paid to the victims. What does someone have to do to get deported? The migrant background of the attacker matches the statistics released by Swedish broadcaster SVT last year that indicated that of the 7,800 rapes that took place last year, 85% of the rapes committed by people unknown to the victim were individuals from a migrant background. Earlier this year, the Swedish government announced it would be publishing a new study on the relationship between migration and crime, the first since 2005. Maybe the Swedish climate change activist Greta Thunberg should be more concerned with Sweden being the rape capital of Europe and with the second highest rates of rape in the world. Your classmates, who are all age 16, might appreciate that more. And still in Scandinavia, a Danish right-wing politician, Marie Korup, from the Danish People's Party, has said, quote, "When Sweden falls and becomes an Arab state, we won't have much in common and we will end the Nordic Passport Union," describing Sweden's immigration policy as lax and weak, and said that, quote, "Sweden does not understand how dangerous mass migration is." She had recently visited Malmo with some of her colleagues and was shocked at seeing ghettos and criminality before their eyes. In the UK, Tommy Robinson, while out canvassing as an MEP in Warrington, has been assaulted twice and had a milkshake thrown over him by a man of Pakistani origin. Considerable the level of acid attacks in the UK, Mr. Robinson really needs to be more careful, as those that want to harm him only have to be lucky once, whereas he has to be lucky all the time. Interestingly, the police who were nearby arrested no one. I can't wait to see him get elected and give his first speech in the European Parliament. If you think Jean-Claude Juncker's sciatica is bad now, wait until you see how bad it will get when he sees Tommy Robinson. Can you imagine going from being arrested and jailed on the same day, the 25th of May last year, the same day of the abortion referendum in Ireland, which I really wonder how many vegans voted yes to abortion, to elected MEP on the same day with a year apart? That would be something to see, wouldn't it? And now for some domestic issues. Yesterday was quite an interesting day. While driving through and doing a bit of business in the morning, I couldn't help but notice a group of climate activists, about 10, standing outside the church in Dundrum village. So I decided to engage in a bit of conversation. I asked, had any of them heard of the Vostok ice core samples that date back 420,000 years and can prove that the temperature has regularly been warmer and sometimes 2 degrees warmer than it is now, and that CO2 increases after heat, not the other way around, and that there is a lagging period of up to 800 years. Only one of them have heard of it. I suggested to them that it was actually a tax grab and that climate tax was a transfer of wealth from poor people to rich people. And I said that the founder of the Weather Channel didn't believe in it. Neither did one of the founders of Greenpeace, Patrick Moore. And that if the UN was that concerned about climate change, surely allowing the movement of 250 million people under the Global Compact on Migration to move from an area of the world where they can't consume into an area of the world where they can, was an act of gross hypocrisy. Needless to say, my comments didn't particularly go down too well, and they suddenly decided it was time to go for a coffee break. Although one of the gentlemen did, I did engage with him for a little longer, and eventually ended up shaking hands with him as we parted and went our separate ways, both still sticking to our own opinion. I also rang yesterday afternoon. I also rang the returning officer regarding the local elections to see if that Social Democrat spoofer was registered, and was told that no one of that name had registered as of Friday evening. And I noticed that she had a GoFundMe page that had been set up 2 months ago and had only €100 in it. So can you imagine my surprise today that just before the close of application, guess who makes a statement from the Social Democrats saying that the spoofer is running as one of their candidates? So I rang the returning officer again to engage, and how could someone who is illegal in the state, who has lied on numerous occasions, had 3 deportation notices, 2 deportation notices of where she was deported back from the UK back to Ireland, and I was told by the officer that somebody only had to be living in Ireland 1 year, and this is a story I hope that Niall Boylan will tackle during the week. And just a notice that this year, the 1st of May this year, is actually the 850th anniversary of the arrival of the Normans in Ireland, landing at Bannow Bay, Wexford, with a force of 40 knights, 600 men and 360 archers, and joined up with forces of around 500 men led by Dermot MacMurrough, and marched on Wexford town, which surrendered after a 2-day siege. The first castle in Ireland was built at Ferrycarrig on a hill overlooking the River Slaney. One of the more interesting characters that came over with the Normans was a man called William Marshall, the first Earl of Pembroke, who built many of their castles, including Ferns Castle, where he married his wife, then aged 17, who was Isabel Leclerc, daughter of Strongbow and Aoife, in August 1189. He also built Hook Lighthouse, Tintern Abbey, Kilkenny Castle, and many more, until the number of castles built within a 140-year period was as many as 1,400, many of which are still in existence today. The Normans knew how to defend this country, unlike our present lot of elected deplorables who seem to want to ruin it at as short a time as possible. Our greatest natural defence to invasion is the sea which surrounds us, with a navy of only 8 ships and an air corps of only 2 maritime patrol aircraft to cover one of the largest coastlines in Europe, measuring 3,171 kilometres. We really need far greater protection. But there are just a couple of comments, which are my own. Thanks for listening. Good night and good luck.